And stacking is essentially using more than one peptide, combining peptides for a synergistic effect, which just means they work better together than they do on their own.
Welcome to Hormones Happen, the no-fluff podcast for men and women who are tired of feeling stuck in someone else's body. If you've been dragging through your day, struggling with stubborn weight, low sex drive, brain fog, or just feeling off, you're not crazy, and you're definitely not alone. I'm a nurse practitioner who's helped countless people transform their lives through hormone replacement therapy, and I've been through the journey myself. Here, we cut through the confusion, ditch the shame, and talk real solutions. Because it's time to stop just surviving and start thriving. This is your moment to be the hero of your own story.
Welcome to another episode of Hormones Happen. You asked, I provide. I have been getting hundreds of questions regarding which peptide is best. I'm looking to build muscle. I'm looking to lose body fat. Which peptide do I want to use? I've heard about Sermorelin. I've heard about Tesamorelin, Ipamorelin, CJC1295. Which one is best, right? The $1,000,000 question. So I'm going to today provide the battle of the Secretagogues. Now, by Secretagogues, I mean growth hormone Secretagogues. And we're going to talk about what's the difference between growth hormone and growth hormone secretagogues. We're also going to talk about the four most popular growth hormone secretagogues, which one's best, which one's a waste of money, and then maybe some special nuances that you never even thought of. So let's, without further ado, get right into the good stuff. So, what is the difference between growth hormone and a growth hormone secretagogue? Well, they both aim at increasing circulating growth hormone levels, but they work in very different ways. And those different ways have some clinical implications that we need to think about. So with actual growth hormone, or as we call it, recombinant human growth hormone, it's a bioidentical version of the growth hormone that your body makes by the pituitary gland. It naturally produces this. And when you're taking this recombinant growth hormone, it's bypassing your body's regulatory system entirely. And it delivers the growth hormone directly into the bloodstream via your injection. Now, with growth hormone secretagogues, these are compounds that stimulate your own pituitary to release natural growth hormone. They essentially work by mimicking natural signaling molecules, such as growth hormone releasing hormone or ghrelin, which essentially just tap the shoulder of the pituitary and say, look, guys, make some more growth hormone. So look, growth hormone is not secreted in a steady, controlled manner. It's actually released in spurts, just very sporadically, usually in the middle of the night, like around 2 o'clock. And so when we're taking growth hormone, recombinant growth hormone, we're not getting these sporadic levels. We're getting the growth hormone when we actually inject it. So we're going to get this huge growth hormone spike as soon as we inject it. And then it'll come down to probably baseline or lower than that sometimes. Now with the secretagogues, we're essentially preserving that natural spurting motion of our growth hormone release, but we're increasing the amount that we get. We're not essentially changing the release of it. We're just promoting more of it when it happens. We've talked about feedback mechanisms many, many times. And we've talked about how when you take testosterone, your brain doesn't know that. It stops making stimulatory hormones, and we call this shutdown. Now, when we take recombinant growth hormone, same thing happens. Our brain thinks, wow, we're making way too much growth hormone. So it thinks it doesn't need to make anymore. This is a negative feedback mechanism on what's called the hypothalamic pituitary axis. And so when you're taking recombinant growth hormone, you're suppressing your natural production of it. Whereas with the secretagogues, we're relying on good pituitary function. because we're essentially just stimulating the pituitary gland to create more growth hormone. Now, the caveat to this is if your pituitary gland is damaged or there's some kind of issue with its secretion of that growth hormone, it's not going to help. It's essentially like taking HCG, which acts as luteinizing hormone in the body, and expecting it to release testosterone from testes that don't do their job. If you have a primary hypogonadism, meaning your testes aren't releasing testosterone, and we're just stimulating them, it doesn't matter. You're not going to get more stimulation. Same thing with growth hormone. If your anterior pituitary gland is not able to respond to the stimulation, we can stimulate it all day long. You're not going to get it. And in that situation, yes, growth hormone would be a much better option because you will still get those effects. Now, what about their effects on IGF-1 or insulin-like growth factor 1?
Enjoying the podcast? There's plenty more where that came from. Head over to stillcity-trt.com for expert insights, tips, and everything you need to know about HRT and TRT. Now let's dive back in.
Now, before we talk about the effects, let's just talk about it in general real quick. IGF-1 is essentially the workhorse that carries out all the benefits that we associate with growth hormone. IGF-1 is anabolic. It drives muscle protein synthesis, cell growth, and most importantly for most people, tissue repair, far more directly than growth hormone itself. And when we think about it, growth hormone is like the project manager, and IGF-1 is like the construction crew. They're the ones that are actually building muscle, repairing tendons, and of course, regenerating the tissues. So ultimately, we are looking for IGF-1 production, which is going to give us those effects that we're looking for, whether or not we're taking growth hormone or a growth hormone secretagogue. And with growth hormone, recombinant growth hormone, we're going to see directly raised IGF-1 levels. We're going to see massive sudden peaks of IGF-1. Whereas with the secretagogues, we're going to see a more gradual increase, generally to a lesser degree, although still enough to get those clinical benefits that we're looking for. Another big difference between the two is going to be cost. Recombinant growth hormone is very expensive, whereas these secretagogues are a very reasonably priced alternative that give us significant benefit as well. I would never say that the growth hormone secretagogues are going to outperform growth hormone because that would be misinformation. But what I will tell you is, depending on your goals, these growth hormone secretagogues are perfect for about 90% of us. And they achieve the building of muscle mass, body fat composition changes, aka fat loss, longevity, and repair of injuries and connective tissue. They do just fine at an affordable price range. Now, since I love analogies, just to kind of summarize the difference between growth hormone and growth hormone secretagogues, I want you to think of growth hormone as essentially hiring an outside contractor because you want to do some work on your house. Your house is in poor repair. The house is your body, by the way. And you want to hire someone, an outside contractor. That's growth hormone. They're going to be fast and direct, but with more oversight and potential long-term dependency, right? Now, with the secretagogues, this is like giving your in-house team better tools and a little bit of a pep talk, right? They still do the work. They're in their own natural rhythm, but they can't exceed the limits of your current staffing, which would be your pituitary function. Because the pituitary at the end of the day is going to determine what degree of benefit you get when we're naturally stimulating production, much like with HCG and the testes. That's why you don't see a lot of guys with super physiological levels of testosterone on HCG. You're limited by the testes. Same thing with these growth hormone secretagogues. We're limited by the anterior pituitary gland. Whereas with growth hormone, the sky's the limit. You can inject as many units as you want. but there are going to be specific nuances with your natural production. Now that we know the difference between growth hormone and growth hormone secretagogues, we're going to talk about the four most common growth hormone secretagogues: CJC 1295, Ipamorelin, Tesamorelin, and Sermorelin. And while these peptides do significant things, I'm going to be focusing more on the sports performance, physical alteration benefits, because that is what 90% of people want these for. With CJC 1295, which I'm just going to call it CJC moving forward, this is a solid baseline growth hormone support peptide. It's going to help with recovery and body composition improvements. I typically see this stacked with other peptides such as Ipamorelin. I don't often see it used on its own. And sometimes it'll be combined with what's called a drug affinity complex, which alters the way that it interacts with a protein called albumin, which prolongs its life in your body. Now, CJC also helps with collagen synthesis. It also helps with joint, tendon, connective tissue support. It's a well-rounded peptide, but usually really relies on other peptides for a synergistic effect.
Guys, if you like content like this, please like, follow, and share the Still City HRT and Weight Loss Facebook and Instagram page. Now back to the podcast.
Ipamorelin, excellent for acute recovery periods. It's got a short half-life, which allows for strategic timing, usually post-training or right before you go to sleep. It's got minimal side hormone changes too, so we're not going to see spikes of cortisol and prolactin, which can hinder recovery long-term. This also is stacked oftentimes with CJC or Sermorelin as part of a recovery protocol because it has these amplified growth hormone pulses, which you will see is the trend for all of these growth hormone secretagogues. And alone, it's got fairly modest increase in growth hormone compared to other growth hormone secretagogues, but it's really, really powerful as part of a stack. Tesamorelin really shines with fat loss. This peptide has the most potent effects on visceral fat loss, which is the fat that's around your organs, but also fat loss in general, the fat that you can see. I do know a lot of guys that will use this in weight class sports such as weightlifting, MMA, sprinting, gymnastics, things where you want to be lighter, you want to be leaner is important. It helps to improve that metabolic efficiency, which helps improve your training and also your recovery in the end. So although it's really great for the abdominal fat reduction, it also helps with cardiovascular efficiency because when we have less fat, we have more insulin sensitization, we utilize our glucose better. And one caveat is this isn't a great peptide for injury recovery. We're not going to see a lot of benefit on tendon or ligament repair. And oftentimes I do see it used in conjunction with CJC and even Ipamorelin is like a triple blend as well. It's a shorter acting peptide, so it's going to need more frequent dosing, usually daily. Sermorelin is personally one of my favorites. It provides a natural growth hormone release, supports recovery, and gradual body composition improvements over time. It's much gentler on your endocrine system, which maintains your pituitary responsiveness over time, meaning this peptide is really best for long-term use. I will tell you that most people don't really even see the full benefits till they're at least 3 months in. Now, it's a safe physiological stimulation of growth hormone secretion like we talked about, decreased risk of desensitization compared to some of the other growth hormone secretagogues, although it's also very rare. Sermorelin does have a shorter half-life, which means less overall growth hormone exposure than other peptides. And once again, it is for someone who wants to commit to using this for at least 3 months. Now, what's the maximum amount of time? Well, it's really hard to say. You could be on it for years. I have patients who have been on it for years. I've been on it for about 6 months and I love it. The changes will come, but it's not nearly as quick as some of the other growth hormone secretagogues. With Sermorelin, it can be stacked, but this is probably the one growth hormone secretagogue that I do see used on its own. Chances are, if you're not new to the peptide world, you've heard of stacking. And stacking is essentially using more than one peptide, combining peptides for a synergistic effect, which just means they work better together than they do on their own. Now, with our growth hormone secretagogues, we have really two different mechanisms that these things work. We have our growth hormone releasing hormone analogs, and we have our ghrelin mimetics. And with the analogs, these are essentially targeting the growth hormone releasing receptor in the pituitary, and they're going to increase the amplitude or the size of the growth hormone pulses. Now, it's a more physiologically accurate, natural, I suppose you could say, more gentle, and it's better for long-term use. It's essentially like turning up the volume on a song that's already playing. The song's already there, you're just going to get a bigger pulse, a bigger sound of the music. And this is going to be the peptides like CJC, Sermorelin, and Tesamorelin. Now, with our ghrelin mimetics, ghrelin is a stomach-derived hormone that signals hunger and growth hormone release. And it's going to target, of course, the ghrelin receptor, which is located in the pituitary and the hypothalamus. This is going to increase the frequency of our growth hormone release. And so, going back to the radio, it's essentially like hitting the play button on the radio. And so, although it's not playing, we hit the play button, now we're starting. So, the ghrelin is the frequency, and the analogs are essentially the amplitude. When we combine them together, we're getting the best of both worlds. And so you will always see these peptides being stacked because we're targeting the release of growth hormone through different mechanisms to achieve better results than just one of them on their own. Some considerations to think about when taking these peptides. A lot of people will say take them at nighttime before bed because growth hormone makes you tired. And while that is true, I have found in my experience that taking them during the day is just fine. Really, you want to take them in a fasted state. So you want to refrain from eating 2 hours before you take it. And the reason is when you eat, the food breaks down. So we get insulin release. And that insulin is going to compete with the peptides and it can decrease the efficiency of it. So if you're taking it on a fasted state, you're doing the best thing you can for the effectiveness. The time of day doesn't really matter. I take it first thing in the morning before the gym. Amazing pumps, great energy. Guess what, guys? I'm not falling asleep on the leg press. Now, some people will also mix this very aggressively. I've seen some people shoot bacteriostatic water into this vial, and I'll take a step back. Oftentimes when you get these peptides, they're called lyophilized. You'll get a vial with a powder in it, and then you'll get a second vial with bacteriostatic water. And you will be responsible for putting the bacteriostatic water in the lyophilized vial. And some people will draw that bacteriostatic water up, insert it into the vial of lyophilized powder, and just shoot it in. Just chaos. And then they'll shake the vial.
Let's get real for a second. Yeah, aging happens, but feeling exhausted, struggling with sleep, losing your edge in the bedroom, and watching your confidence tank, that's not just getting older. That's a hormonal imbalance, and you don't have to live with it. They'll tell you hormones are dangerous, but hand you a prescription with a mile-long list of effects. Enough is enough, guys. At Steel City HRT and Weight Loss, we cut through the noise. We offer safe, bioidentical hormone therapy customized to you and backed by real lab monitoring and personalized care. Because your health isn't one size fits all. If you're done with the BS and ready to feel like yourself again, strong, focused, and confident, call or text us at 719-669-4223. Let's build a plan that actually works for you. Steel City HRT and Weight Loss. Be the hero of your own story.
While that is probably okay, The reality is these peptides are fragile. And I didn't believe it at first. I had to do some research. These peptides can be pretty fragile, and we can decrease the efficiency, the efficacy of it with improper mixing techniques. The best way to do this is to drop however much bacteriostatic water you need for your concentration. It should be on your prescription label. When you insert it into the vial, aim it to the sidewall. Don't direct the stream right into your peptide, because that vial's it's essentially vacuumized. When you put that needle in, it's going to start pulling that water. So be ready. Aim it towards the sidewall. Spray it at the side of the vial and let it drip down into the powder. Now, once it's mixed, gently roll it between your palms. No shaking. Roll it and then store that bad boy carefully in the refrigerator. We want to avoid frequent or extreme temperature fluctuations. We don't want to shake it because these are fragile. And if we want it to work our best, if we want to get our money's worth out of these peptides, treat them kindly. And they will then treat you better. A consideration that we have to have with both growth hormone and growth hormone releasing secretagogues is insulin and the impact on our glucose. Now, with someone who's a fragile diabetic, we have to be concerned with hyperglycemia or high blood glucose, because growth hormone itself is counter-regulatory to insulin, which means that it raises our blood sugar, our blood glucose, by increasing hepatic glucose output. It also reduces insulin sensitivity in the muscle and fat tissue. So when we raise growth hormone, and subsequently after that, IGF-1, we can see mild transient, meaning it comes and goes, insulin resistance, especially with higher or constant growth hormone levels, aka recombinant growth hormone. Now, slightly elevated fasting glucose or hemoglobin A1C can be valuable in those individuals. Otherwise, with a normal, healthy person, there's really no need to check these, because with the growth hormone secretagogues especially, we're not going to be seeing the same levels of insulin resistance or the effects on our glucose. While we're on the topic of peptides, I did want to let you guys know that I'm working with a peptide expert, a couple of them. These guys are like the leading experts right now in the peptide world. And we're developing some amazing peptide protocols that are all based off of this whole premise of synergy. And we're going to have specific stacks for performance, for recovery. And what's really cool, because we all know that, financially times can be hard, we're going to have different tiers of therapy: gold, silver, and bronze. So that way, even if you don't have the funds to get a gold membership or whatever it may be, a package, you could still get some benefit with the bronze, because these are all still very efficacious synergistic peptides. And so we're trying to provide as many options as possible, because peptides are difficult to source from FDA accredited pharmacies because of the price. It's very easy to go online and get research only, not for human consumption peptides. But at that point in time, the risk of harm is there, but also the risk of, less than efficacious formulations also. So in order to provide the most effective pharmaceutical grade peptides, we're going to go ahead and start making synergistic, essentially, protocols to help with everyone to be able to get whatever their specific niche is, whether it's to build muscle, to lose body fat, for, like I said, for injury recovery, post-operative recovery. We're going to have a lot of these, because I'm leaning heavily on these experts for the research, for the science. We're double checking this. We're making sure that there's no added bullshit that you don't need in there. We want to make sure that you're just paying for what works. And that should be coming out pretty soon. I will make an announcement about it. Stay tuned. But it's a way that we can provide the beauty of peptides to the masses. This is exciting news, guys. And regarding which one of these growth hormone secretagogues won the battle of the secretagogues, well, they all win. They all have their place at the table. So does growth hormone. It depends on your goals. I can personally attest to Sermorelin. I love it. I have tons of patients on all the other peptides. They love it. I see some absolutely phenomenal transformations with these. And if you want to talk about synergy, you add this to a hormone replacement therapy protocol for women or a testosterone replacement therapy protocol for a man, and you are talking about superhero protocols here.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Hormones Happen. I hope you're walking away with some clarity and confidence. If this resonated with you, let's keep the conversation going. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or over on the blog. And if you haven't yet subscribed yet, go ahead. It's the easiest way to keep growing and learning. As always, we believe in your power to heal, thrive, and lead. Be the hero of your own story.